Alright, today we will continue to go over the content from our RHCSA question bank. Next, we will mainly be discussing the second question. Previously, in the first question, we mainly configured our IP address and hostname. After setting up these two items, the following steps are actually still somewhat related to this, especially, for example, in our second question. So, for the second question here, we need to configure a yum repository, specifically the default repository. First of all, we need to pay attention to one thing here. If there are issues with your IP or hostname configuration in the first question, it will actually affect the following questions, because if your IP is incorrect, you won't be able to connect to what? That's right, you won't be able to connect to the subsequent environment. So everyone needs to pay attention to each question here, especially when it comes to things like IP addresses, as well as software installation and configuration and similar topics. In fact, some parts will affect the subsequent questions, meaning that many of our questions are actually connected to each other. So what must everyone do? After completing each question, you must make sure to check that there are no issues before moving on to the next one. Checking usually just involves one or two commands, right? Just a command to verify things, right? By using just one command here, even though it might seem like you're running a few extra commands, as long as you can catch any issues, it can actually save you a lot of time. All right, so first, let's take a look at the main requirements for the second question. First of all, here, it requires us to configure our default repository. In the exam, you will actually be given the specific path to the repository. The exact path will be provided to you. In fact, when adding a repository, the key thing is just one item, the base URL. That's the crucial part. The rest is actually not important. So here, we actually only need to configure this one line, and that's enough. You might ask, is there any significant purpose to configuring those other options? Actually, no, they don't really serve any purpose. So just having this one line is actually enough. And here, you don't really need to memorize this line either, because during exams or in any relevant situation, it will be provided to you. Also, if you think it's too long, you can just copy it. There's no problem with that. But you must remember the basic structure. You need to remember the basic structure of the repo file. So first, here there are, and you must pay attention to this, a total of two parts here. You can think of it as two repositories. So two repositories, this is actually different from older versions of the system, right? In previous systems, there might have only been one repository. But now, and for some of the more updated systems, basically most systems use two repositories as the standard. Actually, having one or two repositories just means that the storage is categorizing different types of software. The content is still basically the same, but here it mainly refers to two different types of software. So here, first of all, we need to write it twice here, because in the question, as we can see, it provides the available options. There are just two links here, just two links. So naturally, we just need to write two pieces of content here, and that will be enough. Next, let's take a closer look at the specific configuration method. First, let's connect to our corresponding remote host.
Let's pause for a short announcement. Friends, if you're currently preparing for this ITification exam, or if you've been studying for a while but don't feel your preparation is very efficient, this is something you shouldn't miss. Our team has been focused on its certification dumps for 16 years, doing one thing consistently, organizing the most up-to-date, most exam accurate, and easiest to use dumps to help candidates pass their exams more efficiently. Our dumps closely follow official exam updates. They are stable, highly accurate, and well aligned with real exam questions, allowing you to prepare with more confidence while spending less time. If you'd like to get the dumps for this exam and pass the certification faster, you can contact us directly via WhatsApp or YouTube private messages. We're happy to explain the latest update dates, dump stability, exam policies in different countries, as well as any current purchase discounts. Everything is clear and transparent before you decide. We also place great importance on payment security and privacy protection. The entire purchasing process is simple and secure, with no unnecessary data collection. Your personal information and privacy are fully protected. In addition, we provide 24/7 consultation and after-sales support. Whether you're just getting started or running into issues right before the exam, our support team will patiently and professionally help you analyze and solve problems. You're never preparing alone. Beyond this specific exam, our dumps cover almost all major IT certification tracks. If you plan to pursue other IT certifications in the future, feel free to reach out anytime. We'll give recommendations based on your goals.
Here we've already connected to the first host. Here we're actually continuing from the previous question. In the last question, what did we configure? We configured this. The IP address, right? Including the host name part, right? The IP address and the host name. After you finish these configurations, right? Make sure your address is correct and the host name is correct. then move on to the second question. So for the second question, the first thing is we need to edit this repository, the repository. Here, everyone needs to pay attention. If there are requirements specified in the instructions, follow those requirements. If there are no specific requirements, you can define it yourself. For example, for things like the name, under normal circumstances, where should our repository be located? Under the easy directory, what exactly? Under the point RPSD directory. So here, we can actually just write our own file, right? A configuration file. If the image specifies a required name for this file, then you should follow that requirement. If there is no requirement, then you can name it however you like. It's up to you. These basic parameters, you just need to handle them flexibly. Once we come in here, as we mentioned earlier, this problem gives us two links. Two URL links. So here, we definitely need to write two of them, right? Here, again, if there are specific requirements for the name of our repository, then follow those requirements. If there are no requirements, you can define it however you like. But the base URL is definitely required. This is a must. If you don't specify this, you won't be able to find the actual repository, nor will you be able to connect to it, because later in the problem, you'll need to use this repository to install some software and so on. The second question is very important. After you finish the second question, you must verify whether you can actually install software successfully before moving on to the next step, right? So here, since there are two, we just define them according to the names of the repositories. As for the names, the first one is base OS, right? You can actually name it whatever you like. For example, you can call it base OS, or you can use the full name. It doesn't matter. If the question specifies a requirement, then follow that. If not, you can choose freely. Regarding the name, it's the same for the name. The most important part is actually here, this base UL, this content. If you think this part is a bit long and you're worried about making a mistake when writing it, you can just copy it yourself. And of course, after you finish writing this, we will still need to verify it. So whether you write it correctly or not, in the end, you'll still need to check it. Using commands. Let's use a command to verify our result. Here we enter our path. To start off, this right here is the very first one. And following that, we have the GPT check key. Specifically this particular part right here. In some previous versions, this was actually required as well. So here, just pay attention. Follow whatever requirements are provided. If the question doesn't specify, just write HBG check no, right? Or 0 is fine too. 1 and yes mean the same thing, and 0 and no are the same. Just keep that in mind. And then if it is required, remember, after setting it to 1 or yes, you need to add a key as well. That is, what is your key? If the question doesn't require a key, then you don't need to write it. If it does, then include it. Actually, the main point of this question is just the base URL. How you write the rest doesn't really matter. Yeah, anyway is fine, actually. Anyway works. All right, that's the first one. The second one is our APP, right? Once you have finished specifying those details, next we will assign a specific name to it. The next step is base. Then URL equals. As for the path, it's actually the same as the one above, except for the final name. There's a slight difference in the name, so pay attention to that. Let's take a closer look at these options. For the final file path, you can just write it out exactly like this. It's just that the last part of the path is different, so pay attention to uppercase and lowercase letters. Just be careful with the case. The base OS above, right? BIOS is in uppercase, and for APP stream, both A and S are uppercase. All right, after specifying that, the rest is the same. Normally, you need to enable this first, right? No matter what the question requires, if you don't enable it, you won't be able to use it later. For the next step, it depends on the requirements of the question. If there are no requirements, just proceed. If there are, then use yes and add kter followed by a key provided in the question. Actually, this key is something optional. If there is one, right, then just write it down. It's basically for thoroughness. If there isn't one, you can just write no. It won't affect the software installation anyway. After we've finished this part, let's test it and also check whether we've written the path correctly. Actually, the most common mistake here is getting the path wrong. So how do you check it? Basically, you can use our viewing command to check. Go check the information of our repository, right? Just take a look at the repository information, right? You can see it. Or you could also just try installing a relatively small piece of software, for example, our FTP software, right? If you see here that the installation was successful and there are no issues, then what does that mean? It means our The configuration of the storage repository is fine. You must verify this. This step is essential to verify because later on we will be installing other software as well. If you encounter issues at this step, it will actually affect the subsequent software installations. So if there are problems here, it will impact what comes next, right? It will be affected, right? When the time comes, you might find that you can't proceed with the installation. And then what do you have to do? You have to go back to our second step to troubleshoot. So here, it's best for everyone to add a verification step after completing each task to make sure there are no issues with this task and that it won't affect the following tasks. Only then should you move on to the next task. This way, actually, it's one extra step, but overall, it can actually save you some time. If a problem does occur, it can still save you some time. All right, that's our solution for the second question. So this brings us to today's. For this problem, in the end, you really must verify it. Verification is absolutely essential. As for the path, if you don't write it by hand and just use the copy-paste method, generally you won't make a mistake, right? Actually, you won't make a mistake, and as long as you verify at the end that it can be installed, then there's no problem. All right, that's all for today's content. In the future, I will continue to bring you explanations of other problems. If you're interested, you can directly communicate in the comments section below. If you need the question bank, you can also contact me directly. All right, that's it for today. Goodbye, everyone.